Imagine the moment right after you post a photo online. You've carefully picked the filter, figured out the perfect caption, and finally, you hit share. You set your phone face up on the table, and then you just wait.
Minutes pass. It's such a simple phrase, right? But honestly, inside that waiting period lives this visceral, almost universal tension. Nothing in your physical room has changed, there's no actual survival threat, and yet this invisible, powerful anticipation is just quietly tightening in your chest.
And then the screen lights up, a single notification, somebody liked it. And instantly, it's like something inside your brain's architecture just shifts. You get that hit of dopamine, this profound emotional reward. You feel seen, right? Validated. And it's all just from a glowing pixel. So why exactly does our biology react so intensely to this? Why humans are addicted to attention. Okay, let's dive into this. In this explainer, we're going to look way beneath the surface of what feels like a purely modern habit. We're going to basically excavate the psychological architecture of validation and uncover how a completely fundamental human craving has quietly morphed into, well, one of the most powerful forces manipulating our behavior today. So why does being ignored sometimes feel painful, like physically painful? It is so easy to just dismiss our modern obsession with notifications as, shallow vanity. But if we strip away the screens, if we strip away internet culture entirely, we're actually left with a much older, much darker survival mechanism. Indifference hurts us because our brains are fundamentally wired to be terrified of it. Before likes and followers even existed, we have to travel back thousands of years, right down to the evolutionary roots of human psychology. Humans are, at our very core, pack animals. Think about the ancient world. Literally, no human survived alone. The tribe was everything: protection, food, shelter. Social acceptance wasn't just some nice-to-have comfort, it was an absolute mandatory requirement to physically survive. Which sets up this really fascinating parallel. Look at modern vulnerability versus ancient vulnerability. Today, we suffer from this distinct, quiet anxiety of having zero visibility online. But that anxiety, it's just an echo of a much older vulnerability, being invisible to the tribe. Back in the harsh environment of our ancestors, if you weren't noticed, you were left behind. And being left behind literally meant death. Connection was survival. So over thousands of generations, this biological programming became deeply, deeply entrenched in us. Thousands of years ago, social belonging equaled physical survival. A few hundred years ago, your social standing completely dictated your economic and marital opportunities. And present day, well, traces of those exact same ancient instincts are just reacting to the little glass screens in our pockets. Positive attention online creates euphoria because, deep down in our DNA, it signals that we're safe. But here's where it gets tricky. A dangerous kind of mutation happens when this ancient instinct adapts to our modern world. Psychologists call it identity dependency. This is when the human brain begins to associate external recognition and visibility directly with our own self-worth. And it happens so quietly. Our need for attention shifts from being just a pleasant social signal to an absolute psychological necessity, just to feel valid. And that brings us to this dramatic digital collision, the exact moment when attention becomes identity. For literally the entirety of human history, attention was a scarce, highly localized resource, right? You interacted with a village of maybe, 150 people. But the internet took this historically limited resource and made it universally measurable. Suddenly, social recognition wasn't just a feeling. It became a visible, permanent public metric. And the scale of that metric is honestly overwhelming. We're talking millions of views, likes, followers. For the first time in human evolution, we don't have to guess our social standing anymore. Algorithms just display it for us in raw numbers. And since we as humans instinctively move toward rewards, well, once attention became quantified like that, we naturally, almost unconsciously, started optimizing our entire lives just to capture it. This creates an incredibly insidious, almost invisible psychological trap. Let's break it down. Step 1 is a simple behavior, like making a post. Step 2, that behavior earns attention. Step 3 is the emotion. That attention triggers a neurochemical response that makes you feel safe and recognized. Which leads to step 4, reinforcement. You repeat the behavior. Without even realizing it, we slowly let these platforms train us. We actually alter our real-world actions just to feed this digital loop. And this whole cycle is just violently amplified by the comparison culture trap. Humans have rarely ever evaluated their success, popularity, status, influence, or recognition in a vacuum. But today, the internet gives us infinite opportunities for constant comparison. At any given second of the day, someone on your screen appears more admired, wealthier, or just more visible than you. So we chase that visibility, falsely believing that if we can just capture enough attention, we'll finally have worth. But this story actually takes a much darker, more systemic turn. The economics of being noticed. Because attention is no longer just some quirky psychological trait, it's been weaponized. It is now a massive, highly optimized economic machine. Think about it. In an age overflowing with infinite information, human focus is the ultimate scarce resource. And visibility, that directly converts into unprecedented revenue. Entire sectors of the global economy are now built completely around this vulnerability. Look at advertising. Their whole mechanism is buying your visibility. Media and entertainment, capturing your engagement. Social platforms are literally designing deeply manipulative feedback loops. And the single currency powering all of this is attention. One of humanity's absolute oldest, most primal survival instincts is now being harvested by the largest economic engines on Earth. There is such a heavy emotional toll to living inside this machine. It's like the quote says, the more people depend on external recognition, the more vulnerable they become to its absence. This right here is the root of our modern emotional exhaustion. Because digital attention is entirely fleeting. When you build your core identity on a metric that fluctuates by the second, you are essentially building your sanity on unstable ground.
So, what are we actually chasing? Let's just take a step back from the algorithms and the notifications for a second and ask ourselves a really fundamental philosophical question. When we obsessively check our screens, when our heart rate physically spikes over a post, what are we genuinely searching for?
We aren't addicted to glowing rectangles. We're addicted to what we desperately hope they provide. Because attention represents belonging, identity, acceptance, connection, meaning. We are just starving for the feeling of significance, that simple reassurance that our existence actually matters to someone else. These needs lived inside us long before the internet, and I promise you, they will remain long after today's platforms are gone. Which ultimately leaves us with a deeply unsettling reality. We possess this ancient, hardwired biological need to be seen by the tribe. So what happens to the human psyche when massive corporations figure out how to exploit that exact vulnerability on a global scale? What happens when entire industries are perfectly designed to keep us forever starving for recognition?